High above the whispering mountains, where clouds sleep like fluffy pillows and the stars come so close you can almost touch them, there lived a small dragon named Ember. Ember had the most beautiful scales in the whole world. They were deep violet in the shade, but when the sunlight hit them, they glittered like 1,000 tiny flames dancing together. He had bright golden eyes that sparkled like lanterns, and a little tail with a triangular tip that swished whenever he was happy. But there was one problem. Ember could not fly. Well, he used to be able to. Once upon a time, he had soared higher than any dragon in the land. He had raced with eagles and played tag with butterflies in the clouds. He had swooped down over crystal blue rivers and looped the loop around mountaintops, laughing with delight. But that was before the day of the big storm. 3 months ago, a terrible thunderstorm had rolled over the mountains. The wind howled like an angry giant, and lightning cracked the sky in two. Little Ember had been flying home when a powerful gust, whoosh, slammed into him and sent him spinning and tumbling until he crashed into a soft, mossy hillside. He wasn't badly hurt. Not on the outside, anyway. But ever since that day, every time Ember spread his wings to fly, something awful happened in his chest. His heart began to beat very, very fast. His claws trembled. His tummy did somersaults. And his mind kept whispering horrible things. Speech bubble hash, what if you fall again? What if the wind catches you? What if you tumble and never stop? So Ember kept his wings folded tight against his back. He stopped going to his favorite high places. He watched other dragons flying overhead and felt a sad, hollow feeling in his chest, like a cave with no treasure in it. Glowing star, did you know? Sometimes, after something scary happens, our hearts and minds feel afraid even when we are perfectly safe. This feeling has a name. It is called fear. Even the bravest dragons feel it sometimes. His mother, a grand old dragon named Serafini, with silver scales and wise amber eyes, watched her son with gentle worry. She brought him warm mushroom soup and sang him lullabies about the sky. Speech bubble hash, the sky misses you, my little flame, she told him softly one evening, as they sat on their ledge watching the sunset paint the clouds orange and pink. Ember looked at the sky, that enormous, beautiful, terrifying sky, and said nothing. He just pulled his wings tighter around himself, like a purple blanket, and watched the other dragons shrink into tiny dots far above. He missed the sky too. He just didn't know if he would ever be brave enough to go back. One bright morning, while Ember was sitting beneath his favorite oak tree on the mountainside, walking, not flying, as he now always did, he noticed something very strange wedged between two mossy rocks. It was a rolled-up piece of parchment, tied with a ribbon the color of sunshine. Ember pulled it free with his claws and unrolled it carefully. It was a map. But not just any map. It showed 5 magical places, each marked with a golden star. At the top, written in curly letters that glittered as if made of real starlight, were the words, Speech bubble hash for the dragon who has forgotten the SKY. Follow these 5 places, and you will remember everything you need to know. Ember stared at the words for a long time. Could the map really know about him? His golden eyes swept over the 5 locations. The first star pointed to a place called Fern Bottom Valley, which was just at the foot of his mountain. Close enough to walk to, and that made Ember feel a tiny bit less scared. He looked up at the other 4 stars. They climbed higher and higher on the map, deeper into the forest, up rocky cliffs, through a waterfall cave, and finally, at the very top. He quickly rolled the map back up. He wasn't ready to look at the last star yet. But maybe, just maybe, he could go to the first one. Fern Bottom Valley was a deep, quiet, green place where enormous ferns grew as tall as houses and everything smelled of damp earth and sweet rain. Ember had to squeeze through a narrow gap in the rocks to get in, and when he did, he gasped. Sitting in the middle of the valley, half hidden under a gigantic fern leaf, was a very old tortoise. Her shell was covered in intricate patterns that shimmered like the night sky, blues and greens and tiny silver dots. She had deep, wrinkled eyes like 2 calm ponds. Speech bubble hash said the tortoise, without even opening her eyes. The little violet dragon. I expected you last Tuesday, but I suppose today will do. Ember blinked. Speech bubble hash, you were expecting me. Speech bubble hash, I am Tortoise Mara, she said, opening her pond-like eyes slowly. I know a great many things. Sit down, little Ember. I want to tell you a story. Ember shot. His tail curled nervously around his feet. Speech bubble hash, a long time ago, Mara began. I 2. Forgot how to walk. I was knocked onto my back by a great falling branch, and I lay there in the sun for 3 days, watching the clouds. When they finally righted me, I was afraid to walk on uneven ground ever again. I took only perfectly flat paths. I stayed away from roots and rocks, and I became very, very lonely. Ember listened carefully. He had never thought a tortoise could feel something like what he was feeling. Speech bubble hash, how did you start walking again? He asked. Speech bubble hash, I learned, said Mara wisely, that courage does not mean the fear goes away. Courage means you take one step even though the fear is still there, standing right beside you. One step, little dragon. That is all. Turtle Mara's big lesson. Courage isn't about having no fear. It's about doing something even when you are afraid. Even the tiniest step counts. Seedling. Ember walked home slowly, his mind full of the old tortoise's words. One step. Just one step. That night, for the first time in months, he spread one wing slightly before folding it back. It trembled. But it was a step. The second star on the map led Ember to a strange place, a grove of silver birch trees at the edge of the moonlit forest, where the bark shone like mirrors and the leaves whispered secrets to each other. He had barely stepped inside when a flash of rusty red and white somersaulted down from a branch and landed neatly in front of him. It was a fox, the most energetic, fidgety, sparkle-eyed fox Ember had ever seen. She wore a tiny scarf the color of the sky and had 3 white spots on her left ear. Speech bubble hash, hello. Are you the dragon? You're the dragon, aren't you? Mara sent word. I'm Pip. I love climbing things. Do you climb? Oh, right, UFLY. Or wait, do you? Mara said you forgot how. Can you really forget how to fly? That's so interesting. I once forgot how to. Ember left. It was the first real laugh he had let out in months, and it surprised him so much that a little flame popped out of his nostrils, which made Pip jump back and then burst into giggles herself. Speech bubble hash, I forgot how to swim, Pip finished, once she stopped laughing. I used to be an excellent swimmer, and then one day I fell into the icy river and my paw got stuck under a rock and I panicked terribly. After that, I couldn't go near any water that was higher than my ankles for almost a whole year. Ember sat down in the silvery light of the birch grove. Speech bubble hash, how did you get better? He asked. Speech bubble hash, I didn't do it alone, Pip said simply, and her bright eyes grew softer. That's the important thing. Mara sat with me by the riverbank for weeks. First I just looked at the water. Then I put one paw in. Then both paws. Then, slowly, I waded in up to my knees. And one spring morning, I swam again. And I cried a little, because I was so happy. Pip had something to show Ember. She led him to a tall oak tree at the edge of the grove. It had enormous, spreading branches that went up and up and up. Speech bubble hash, climb with me, she said. Ember tilted his head. Speech bubble hash, I have wings, not climbing claws. Speech bubble hash, you have 4 legs and a tail and perfectly good talons, said Pip firmly. Climb. So, feeling rather silly, Ember climbed the oak tree with Pip. His talons gripped the bark. He hauled himself up, branch by branch, pausing to let his racing heart calm down each time. Up and up they went, through rustling golden leaves, until they were as high as the lowest clouds. Pip sat beside him on a wide branch and they looked out over the forest together. The land spread out like a patchwork quilt, greens and golds and the silver thread of a river winding through the trees. Speech bubble hash, see, said Pip quietly. You're high up. And you're okay. Ember realized his talons were no longer gripping so tightly. His breathing had slowed. He looked down at the faraway ground, then back at the horizon, and felt, for the very first time in 3 months, a tiny, fragile sparkle of something. Not quite bravery, but the beginning of bravery. Foxface Pip's big lesson. We don't have to be brave alone. Having a kind friend by your side makes scary things feel much more possible. Who is your Pip? Glowing star. As they climbed back down, Pip quietly slipped her paw into Ember's clawed hand. Speech bubble hash, I'll come with you, she said. Speech bubble hash, as far as you need me. Ember squeezed her paw gently and said thank you, and meant it with every scale on his body. The 3rd and 4th stars on Ember's map took him through steep rocky paths, past a meadow full of glowing moon flowers, and finally to the waterfall of echoes, a magnificent curtain of falling water that crashed and roared and sent rainbow mist floating through the air. Pip was there for every step, chattering cheerfully and pointing out interesting bugs and rocks along the way. She had, as promised, not left his side. Behind the waterfall was a cave. The map's star pointed right to it. Ember hesitated at the waterfall's edge. The water was loud and wild, and the spray was cold, and stepping through it felt scary, like stepping through a wall. "Speech bubble hash on 3, said Pip. "Speech bubble hash on 3, agreed Ember. "Speech bubble hash 1, 2, 3. They burst through the waterfall together, laughing and sputtering and shaking droplets from their fur and scales. And there, sitting in a warm, dry cave lit by 100 tiny glowworms, was the strangest creature Ember had ever seen. It was an old owl, enormous and magnificent, with feathers the color of storm clouds and eyes like 2 great golden moons. He had books stacked all around him, towers and towers of books reaching up to the cave ceiling, and he was writing something in a large notebook with a quill made of his own feather. "Soveg buborik, Ember." "Pip. Sit," he said without looking up, in a voice like distant thunder. "Speech bubble hash, I am Professor Orion," said the owl, finally putting down his quill and fixing Ember with those great golden eyes. "I know why you are here. You want to know how to stop being afraid." "Speech bubble hash, can you teach me?" asked Ember. "Speech bubble hash, I can teach you to understand your fear," said Orion. "Understanding is the first key to unlocking it." He reached into a tall stack of books and pulled out a very small, very worn one. On the cover, in faded gold letters, were the words, "A Guide for Brave Hearts." "Speech bubble hash, when something frightening happens to us," Orion began, opening the book to a page covered in beautiful illustrations. "Our mind tries to protect us. It learns to be careful. It says, remember that. Stay away from that. Be afraid of that. This is not a flaw, little dragon. This is your mind working exactly as it should." Ember frowned slightly. "Speech bubble hash, but then how do I make it stop?" "Speech bubble hash, you show your mind that it can be safe again," said Orion gently. "You go back, slowly, carefully, with kindness, and you show your brave heart that the sky is not the enemy. The storm was the scary thing, not the sky itself." Owl Professor Orion's big lesson. Your brain remembers scary things to keep you safe, but sometimes it gets confused. You have to show it, slowly, gently, that you are okay. Your mind and your heart are on the same team. Blue heart. Orion gave Ember a small golden feather to keep. "Speech bubble hash when you feel afraid." He said, "Speech bubble hash, hold this feather and remember, the storm was temporary. The sky is forever." Ember tucked the feather carefully under one of his violet scales, right over his heart. It glowed faintly warm against his chest, like a tiny sun. And later that afternoon, standing on a rocky ledge above the waterfall, with Pip sitting beside him, Ember slowly, very slowly, spread both his wings wide open. They trembled, but they were open, and the wind slipped under them like a gentle hand, and for one brilliant, terrifying, glorious second, his feet left the rock. He landed immediately, heart hammering. But he was grinning. He was actually, truly grinning. "Speech bubble hash, you did it," screamed Pip, doing 3 backflips in a row. "You hovered. That was a hover. Ember." There was one star left on the map. The 5th and final one. It sat at the very top of the highest peak in the Whispering Mountains, a place called Skystone Summit, where the clouds themselves came to rest. Ember and Pip began the climb in golden morning light, full of hope. But by midday, something changed. The wind picked up. The temperature dropped. Dark grey clouds boiled up from behind the mountains with frightening speed. Thunder rumbled, first distant, then closer, then very, very close indeed. "Soveg buborik, Ember," said Pip, her ears flattening. Ember had gone completely still. His golden eyes were wide. His wings pressed so tightly against his body that he could hardly breathe. The rumbling sky, the whipping wind, the flashing light in the distance, it was exactly like that day. The day of the big storm. Every terrible memory crashed over him like a wave. His legs began to shake. A voice in his head screamed, "Speech bubble hash, turn back. Go back. It will happen again." Pip pressed herself against his side, warm and solid and real. "Speech bubble hash, hey, she said quietly. I'm here. You're not alone. Look at me. Ember looked at her. Her bright, kind eyes. Her 3 white ear spots. Her sunshine-colored scarf, now whipping in the wind. Speech bubble hash, this is a storm, said Pip. Storms happen. And we are going to sit right here, together, and let it pass. Because it will pass. They found a sheltered nook beneath an overhang of rock and huddled together as the storm rolled over the mountain. Lightning lit the sky in brilliant white. Rain hammered the stone. Thunder shook the world. And Ember sat very still and breathed. One breath. Then another. He pressed his claws to the ground. Solid, real, steady ground. He felt the golden feather warm against his heart. He remembered Mara's words. One step. Orion's words. The storm is temporary. The sky is forever. After a long time, perhaps an hour, perhaps more, the thunder softened. The rain thinned to a gentle patter. The clouds began to pull apart like torn grey cotton, and through the gaps came the most extraordinary light, a deep golden, honeyed sunlight that made everything it touched look magical. Ember unsurled. He stood up. He had survived the storm. He had not fallen. He had not been swept away. He had been afraid, very, very afraid, and he had stayed anyway, and he was still here. Thundercloud and rain hashed the big truth about storms. Storms, the weather kind and the scary feeling kind, always, always, always pass. No matter how loud or dark they get. After every storm, the sun comes back. Every single time. Sun. Speech bubble hash, the summit is just up there, said Pip softly, pointing upward. Still want to go. The sky above was now an impossible, gorgeous blue. Clean as glass. Washed absolutely pure by the storm. Ember looked up at it. He thought about everything. The tortoise in the fern valley, the oak tree, the golden feather. This storm survived. He thought about who he was before, the dragon who raced eagles and laughed in the clouds. He spread his wings. They didn't tremble. Speech bubble hash yes, said Ember. Let's go. Skystone Summit was everything the map had promised and more. It was a flat, wide platform of pale grey stone at the very top of the world, so high up that the air tasted different, crisp and cold and impossibly clean, like biting into a winter apple. All around, in every direction, the mountain spread below like a great rumpled blanket, and above was nothing but that endless, perfect, washed blue sky. And sitting on the edge of the summit, dangling her feet over the side as if she was sitting on an ordinary garden wall, was the most unusual creature Ember had ever seen. She was a young dragon, about Ember's age, with scales the color of the sky itself, deep blue and silver and shimmering. She had a scar on one wing, a long pale line that caught the light, and she was looking out at the horizon with an expression of total contentment. She turned when she heard him approach, and smiled. Speech bubble hash, you made it, she said warmly. Im Luna. I've been waiting for you. Speech bubble hash, how did you know I was coming? Ember asked for what felt like the 100th time in this adventure. Speech bubble hash, the map always brings the right dragon to the right place at the right time, Luna said simply, as if this explained everything perfectly. I had the same map once. 3 years ago. I was afraid to fly too, after my wing was torn in a hunting hawk's talons. Luna walked Ember to the very edge of the summit. The drop was enormous, hundreds of feet of pure, open air falling away to the forests and valleys below. Ember's heart gave a great lurch. Pip squeezed his hand from behind. Speech bubble hash, I won't tell you it isn't scary, said Luna. It was the scariest moment of my life when I jumped again. But I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. She looked at him steadily, her sky-colored scales glowing in the late afternoon sun. Speech bubble hash, your wings never forgot. Your body always knew. It was only your fear that made you believe you had lost something. You didn't lose anything, Ember. Your flying is still there. It was always there, waiting for you to trust it again. Ember looked down at his wings. Those same wings that had carried him over rivers and through clouds and into races with eagles. He spread them slowly. The warm updraft from the valley below caught them immediately. Whoosh, a strong, steady river of air, lifting, gentle, sure. His golden eyes filled with tears. He remembered who he was. Ember stepped off the edge of Skystone Summit. For one breathless, heart-stopping half-second, he dropped. And then his wings caught the air, and he was flying. He was flying. The wind rushed against his face, warm and cold and perfect all at once. The world spread out below him like the most beautiful painting ever made. He swept left, then right, and the mountains responded, leaning away like delighted spectators. He looped upward, climbing, climbing, until he burst through a cloud and came out the other side into pure gold, a great ocean of evening light that set his violet scales on fire with color. He roared. Not a scared roar, not a worried roar. A joyful roar, the kind that starts in your belly and shakes your whole body and fills the whole sky with its sound. The mountains carried it back to him as an echo, and that echo sounded like the mountains roaring back. Below, on the summit, Pip was doing so many backflips she eventually fell over. Luna was laughing. And far, far below, in a small cave on the mountainside, old Serafini looked up from her mushroom soup, heard the distant roar, and smiled the widest smile a mother dragon has ever smiled. Ember flew until the stars came out, which was the most glorious thing he had ever done in his entire life. When he finally landed back on the summit, exhausted and happy and shining, Pip flung herself at him in the biggest hug a small fox can give a medium-sized dragon. "Speech bubble hash, that was incredible," she cried. "You flew through a cloud. I saw it." Luna smiled and handed Ember the map. He looked at it properly for the first time. All 5 stars were glowing gold now, but there was something else too. There was a 6th star, right in the middle of the map, that had never been there before. And next to it, in that same curly glittering writing, were words. "Speech bubble hashed, the bravest place you can ever be is where your fear once was." Ember read it 3 times. He folded the map very carefully and tucked it under his scales next to the golden feather. Glowing Star Ember's journey taught us. Turtle courage is one small step, even when you're afraid. Foxface, we are braver with friends beside us. Owl, our minds try to protect us. We just need to show them we are safe. Thundercloud and rain hash, every storm passes. Every single one. Dragon, what we love never really leaves us. It just waits for us to return. And from that evening on, Ember flew every single day. Sometimes in great soaring loops high above the clouds. Sometimes in quiet, gentle glides over moonlit rivers. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Sometimes with Pip riding on his back, screaming with delight. Sometimes with Luna, racing side by side through the mountain peaks. And on the days when the dark clouds came back, because sometimes they did, Ember would land on a steady rock, spread his wings just slightly, feel the golden feather warm against his heart, and breathe. And wait. And know, right down to the tip of his swishy triangular tail, that the sky would be blue again soon. Because it always was.